Hey everybody, welcome to another thrilling episode of Cooking with Mr. Tolley. Tonight we are actually doing something pretty unique and special. We are going to be doing mystery meals with Mr. Tolley. So the concept behind this is pretty similar to some cooking competitions, but with our own little twist. So, you know what? How about I let Mr. Tolley on the field explain it to you? I am here at the farmer's market on Hastings in North Spokane, and we are going to do mystery meals with Mr. Tolley. So the idea here is that my family all get to pick one thing that they want me to cook for dinner, and I get to pick one thing. Then whatever people pick, I have to make. So I will take pictures of what we get, and we'll kind of go from there. So we went to that market, kids got to pick things, I picked first, and the thing that I picked, shelling peas. So this is a shelling pea, which means you can't eat this part here, all right? So it's not a sugar snap pea, it's a shelling pea. To get a shelling pea, you're gonna have to shuck these, but you're gonna go here to the tip, right here. You're just gonna snap it up, all right? Looks like that. And you're gonna peel off a little bit like a zipper. Removes that bit, and then all you gotta do, just stick your fingers in, like so, and pull it apart. And look on the inside there. That is a shelling pea. That is a fresh pea. That is what you would get off of the top of a, or off a pea pod when you do it. So if you've ever had like frozen peas, this is a shelling pea. After I had picked this out, none of my family knew what I had picked. They didn't know what they were gonna pick. And so they went out and they picked their own things. My wife picked dried morel mushrooms. So this is a morel mushroom. It is a wild mushroom. I mean, you can't often buy these at the store. You usually have to get them at farmers markets, or you have to go find them yourselves. Don't do that. It's a really good way to get sick. You also have to cook them. Now, when they're dried like this, you can't really eat them. They're really chewy. So what you have to do is you have to rehydrate them. So to rehydrate something, what you do is put them into a pot of very, very hot water. In this case, I used boiling water. It's kind of hard to see, but they're gonna sit in there for like 20 minutes and they gotta stay covered, so I can't open it up for you. So, along with the peas and the morel mushrooms, my daughter went off and got cheese, but not just any cheese. This is queso fresco, and this is from Lake Wolf. So if you're in Spokane, you can get this cheese at pretty much every farmer's market. They're great. They make pretty much only Mexican style cheeses like queso fresco, which is what this is, cotija, Oaxaca, things like that. This actually is a great cheese. This is a melting cheese. It melts really nicely. It's good for things like cheese sauces, which is good because my son picked tortilla chips. He's picked corn chips. These are Mama Torres, another local Spokane chip. Now I know exactly what you're thinking right now because I had the same thought. You're thinking nachos. You have cheese, you have vegetable, you got mushrooms, nachos. I decided to go a little bit different. So what I decided to do was I decided that we are going to have dips and chips. So I'm gonna make 3 different dips based on what was given to me. The nice thing is that since I'm basically making sauces, this actually plays off really well from the last thing that we made. So my 3 sauces I'm going to make. I am going to make something called a duxelle. A duxelle is a French kind of mushroom-based sauce. Usually a paste, kind of put it in things. I'm going to make a pea and mint and basil pesto. And I'm going to make, of course, a queso, because I got the cheese, I got the chips, it just makes sense. So we'll start off with what you need to make a duxelle. So to make a duxelle, you're going to need 1 ounce of dried morels. You are going to put those into boiling hot water and you're going to let them sit there for 20 minutes. So that is a dried morel mushroom. You're also going to need an onion of some kind. Most traditional when you are doing this in France is to use a shallot. I don't have shallots on me, and one of the rules was I could use what I got from the market and then what I had at home in the pantry. So I am going to utilize this shallot here, although I kind of wish I had picked up some spring onions at the market. You're also going to need thyme. Thyme is an herb. You can find it in dried and fresh forms. This is fresh. It's from my garden. All together, I'm going to put my measurements down at the bottom because, frankly, don't remember off the top of my head. But I think it's about an ounce of thyme. But please look at the note below to see if I was right. So, for the duxelle, you're also going to want olive oil. Now, this is a bit controversial because the actual French duxelle recipe calls for butter. I want to make this a vegan duxelle. Not because I'm a vegan, but because I have friends who are, and it's always good to cook things that all of your friends can eat when you're able to. So I'm going to use olive oil instead of butter. You can get vegan butters as well if that's your kind of thing. As I said before, not really my thing. I am very excited about the idea of using this. And last but not least, and I will admit right now, this is a bit of a controversial ingredient, but I will explain. You are going to need bourbon. Now, this is controversial for a couple reasons. One, I am an educator and I am teaching you how to cook this, and some of you are children. Here's the thing, you're not drinking this, you're cooking it. Also, kids, don't do this at all. This is a good example of a sauce that maybe your parents should make for you, or you could make with them. Second reason this is controversial is because this is not the right cooking thing. Typically, you would use sherry or vermouth or white wine. Well, I don't have those things, and frankly, I don't care. I'm gonna go with this because I think it'll taste good. Ooh, I just got a cringing feeling in my body from all of my chef friends who watch me talk about taking this famous and delicious French sauce or condiment and doing that to it. But I'm already changing it up. Once again, I'm not using a shallot. I'm using a sweet onion. I'm also using olive oil instead of butter. But that's a choice that I decided to make, and I think that it's gonna work out in this case. So let's go ahead and look at how you make a duxelle. So my morel mushrooms have been soaking in boiling water for about 20 minutes. This is kind of what they look like when they're rehydrated. You can see they get a little bit squishier, like that. Do not eat these raw. They are actually a little bit poisonous. They must be cooked. You might be wondering why I got it in a cloth like this. The thing with mushrooms is they carry a lot of moisture and they hold a lot of moisture. So you actually want to get some of that moisture out. So using things like a cheesecloth, terry cloth, things, not terry cloth will rip, but something you don't care a ton about, you're going to wrap up your mushrooms and you're going to squeeze it out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for a second. And there you have it, all nicely kind of wrung out. They're still nice and pliable and soft, but they are not going to be a real problem for me anymore. So I'm going to set those aside. And I'm going to pull out the rest of my ingredients because what we're going to do is we're going to kind of blend this down and then we're going to cook it down. So we need to have onions. Now, as I said before, the traditional recipe calls for the use of a shallot. Shallots are fine, small kind of red onions. They're a little less astringent than regular onions. I don't have any, so I'm going to go with white onions. They're going to dice them real fine. We only need about a quarter cup of these. We don't need a ton of onions. So if you've not seen my show before, a couple things. First of all, knife safety. When I hold my knife, I hold it back here. Don't put my finger out here. Hold right at the back, choking up at the end, okay? When I'm cutting an onion, I'm going to lay it on the flattest side that I can so it doesn't roll on me too much. And I'm going to dice, so I'm going to cut it directly down the middle in half, like so. Notice that I put my hand over the top of the knife blade so it didn't cut me. Now I only need a little bit, so I'm going to put aside the larger half of this. I'm going to pull out this bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this end over here, so the feathered end. That's where the leaves would come up from it, right? Like that. And I'm going to peel away all of this outer hard layer. There you have it. And you'll notice that I am cleaning off my board as I go. Makes things a little bit easier to use. So now that I have this, I have these hairy ends. I'm going to leave these on until I am done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife and I'm actually going to make cuts down this way. Now I'm holding my thing up like this just to show you. I'm going to make real thin cuts. Look at how little onion I have underneath my knife there. I'm going to hold my hand on top of the onion like so. Put my knife parallel to the onion like this. I'm just going to pull my blade back to the back. Now, it is a little contradictory to think of it this way, going back to knife safety, but you want a sharp knife. A dull knife leads to more injuries than a sharp knife does. So what you want is you want a good chef's knife, nice and big, good weight. This is a Japanese style. It's done for slicing rather than for chopping. All right, now that I got those cuts in, I'm gonna go along and I'm going to make equal sized cuts across the onion this way, like so. Boop. And there you have it. Now the last thing I need to do is I need to get a full dice in here. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna line it up and just boom, and down through. And look at that dice that I'm getting out of my onions in this way. Now, the reason we kept the tail on is it kept the whole onion together for us. Held it nice and together. And see, I still have onion that I can use later. So I'm gonna set that aside. All right, move this over into a prep bowl so that I have it ready for the next step, which will be sauteing in a little bit. Okay, on to the thyme. I wanna get these little leaves off. There's a lot of ways I can do that. One of the easiest is just put my fingers on it and delicately kind of pull it away, like so, kind of moving my fingers through as I go. And there we have it. It's pretty much all the thyme I want. I'm gonna give it a quick chop just to make sure it's as small as I can get it. And once again, I'm gonna set that aside into a saute or into a prep tray. Prep trays and prep bowls are excellent. You should have them if you don't have them. They're excellent things to use. All right. Last thing I need to do for this duxelle is make sure I got all of my ingredients measured out entirely, and we'll go on from there. So real quick, let me clean off my board. For the alcohol you're going to use to cook with, which again, sherry is the most typical, I'm going to use brandy or bourbon today. You're going to need about a quarter cup. You can use more or less than that if you would like to. And then down for olive oil, you will need a total of 2 tablespoons of olive oil altogether. So you're going to use some of that at the beginning and some of that at the end. But before we can get to the olive oil, let's jump into our mushrooms again. So the next thing you need to do is process down your mushrooms. Now you could do this by hand. I wouldn't. It takes too long. Just put them into a food processor, and you're not even going to do very much of this. You're just going to kind of get them into small chunks rapidly. So you'll put them in, and you'll lock in your lid, and you'll just pulse them a couple of times. So pulsing, there's a marking on yours called P. Typically that means pulse. Check those. Yeah, I can make them a little smaller than that. And there we go. Nice small little bits of mushroom. And then the rest of this is all over the stove, so we gotta go over to the stove now. Okay, so I got my stove up onto a medium-high heat. And I'm gonna start by adding about 1 tablespoon of olive oil into this pan. I don't tend to measure olive oil. I would if it was butter. That's about a tablespoon. I'm just gonna let that get hot. Kind of want to get to a point where it's slightly shimmering. Like so, there we go. And I'm just going to start cooking down my mushrooms. So I take my processed mushrooms and I add them in. And if I do this right, the heat I want it at, it's going to clap for me. There it is. You hear that little applause from the mushrooms as they hit the oil. If your mushrooms hit cold oil, they will soak it all up, and all you're going to end up with is a bunch of oily mushrooms, which nobody wants. So I'm going to let those cook for a little bit. As I cook them, they will release more water. It's perfectly normal. You can't really do anything about that. While those are starting to cook down, I'm going to add my onions and my thyme, like so. And we are trying to do a kind of slow, but not super slow cook on these. With that, we want to add, as we always want to add when we are cooking, we want to add in a pinch of salt, or more than a pinch of salt. And we want to add in pepper. Salt and pepper act as a flavor enhancer. If you use too much salt, it's bad for you. Don't do that. But you need at least a little bit of salt. Oh, it already smells better in here. So I'm going to let this cook down kind of slowly. As those mushrooms release their water, it will kind of start to steam everything in here. But I kind of want to let this go low and slow. And since I'm doing that, why don't we work on the pesto while this is cooking down? All right, the next sauce I'm going to make is going to be a pesto. Now, I made a pesto last time, yes. But frankly, I love pestos. So I want to make more. And this is going to be a riff on the pesto that we had last time. This is going to be a pea and mint pesto. I'm still going to utilize basil. I'm still going to utilize Parmesan. I'm still going to utilize nuts. I'm not going to use the same kind of nuts that I used last time for a whole host of reasons. But we are going to make that. So to make this work, you are going to need shelled peas. So you're not going to want to have them in the shell form like this. I'm just going to use this right now. Remember how I showed you how to peel this? So you're going to peel them out. But look at the measurement below so you know how many of those you're going to need. You will need fresh basil, of course. The fresher the basil you can get, the better. One of the great things right now is if you go to almost any store, you can buy live basil plants. Those do not go in the ground. They live on like your sink counter, and you water them occasionally so they don't die. It's a good way to get a lot of basil. Basil is one of those plants that if you plant it, you kind of use it up and it's done. But I would highly recommend using fresh basil. If you can get it from a local source, even better. You're going to need mint. I know one of the things you're thinking right here is, what kind of mint, Mr. Tolley? There's so many kinds of mint. You're probably not thinking that because you probably don't, well, you might grow your own mint, I don't know. I'm not actually even sure what kind of mint this is. I used apple mint in my last one. Try lots of different mints. See what they taste like. There's so many kinds. This might be a chocolate mint. They all taste really good, and I would highly recommend using as many of them as you can. You're also going to need nuts or seeds of some kind. Now, very traditional is the use of pine nuts, and we talked about this when I did my last one, but I'm going to change it up today because, again, I'm changing everything up today. Why not? We're going to use pistachios. I love pistachios. Easily my favorite nut. I remember as a kid going through Central Valley of California and seeing all the signs talking about pistachios and constantly wanting pistachios and constantly being told they were too expensive. Well, here's the nice thing is they've come down in price. They're not as expensive. You can buy them like these ones are, which is dry roasted. You can see it's got a little bit of color on it. When you get a pistachio though that's really fresh and good, they're green, this kind of vibrant green, and they go really well in things like this. It's a very Mediterranean nut, which works with a pesto. You're also going to need 1 whole lemon. Again, I like an extremely bright, slightly acidic style of pesto, so I like using a large lemon, a whole one. You could use half of a large lemon or 1 small lemon if you would like a little less. You could use a lime, you could use yuzu. You just need the acid that it produces. You can use sherry vinegar, I've done that before. I'm a fan of lemons. It's very, very traditional. And finally, you're going to need Parmesan or some kind of hard cheese. Now, hard cheese means it's been dried for a long time. They don't melt extremely well. You usually would grate them and put them on things. You guys have had Parmesan before. I will say, you see I'm at the end of my little bit here, but look at this right here. You see where it gets that different coloration right there? That is the rind. It's extremely dry. It's not very good for eating, but you know what it's great for? Tomato sauces, which I'm actually going to make later on this week. Okay, so with the peas, what we're going to do is something called a blanch and shock. So we're going to get them into water just for a tiny bit of time. Once that boiled with salt, then we're going to throw it into ice cold water. That'll stop the cooking process and keep them their kind of vibrant green color, which we really want. Meanwhile, back over here with my mushrooms. See, they've cooked down quite a bit, but they're not quite where I want to be, so I'm actually going to add a little bit more of the olive oil to this to kind of keep it going the way I want it to go. Ooh, you can hear there's some water in there. That's why it's cooking around so much as it goes. I'm just going to stir that around and keep that cooking down a little bit longer. In a second, we're going to do something extremely fun and extremely dangerous, which I do not recommend that any of you try at home without a parent there who knows what they're doing. It's a good way to get seriously hurt. In fact, it's a good way for Miss Tolley to get seriously hurt, but I'm pretty good at these things. So for the shock station, you really do want it to be ice cold. So I have water and ice. I'm just going to set that aside. And once my peas have boiled, really not very long, those kind of float to the top, I'm going to strain them out and dump them into that pretty much right away. All right, it's time for the fun but super dangerous thing that none of you should do. I need to switch cameras really quick so you can see this process in action. Okay, so we are going to add the bourbon. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to flame off this bourbon. It's going to look super cool. Do not do this at home, children. Adults, consider this for yourselves and your own safety. So I got my burner up high, so I got my heat from this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off the burner. I'm going to pour my bourbon in, and then I'm going to put it over the top of the flame and tilt it just enough to ignite it onto fire. While I'm getting that set up, I'm going to have my trusty new camera person set this to slow-mo because this would look cooler. And there you go. It's super cool. I'm gonna let this kind of burn down a little bit. What we're doing right now is we're cooking off the alcohol that's inside of there. We don't want a ton of the alcohol taste, but we do want a little bit of it in there. You'll notice the flame color on this is the color it is because it is bourbon. You did this with sherry. First of all, if you did this with sherry, you don't get to do that. Second of all, it would just be a different color depending on the alcohol you use. So again, children, don't try that at home. And theoretically, at this point, you are done. That is all you need. Just kind of stir it down. As always, you should taste things to see if you like them. This would be where you would add in a little more salt or pepper if it's needed. I'm actually going to take this a step further because I want it to be a dipping sauce, right? Hold on, let me taste. Really yummy. So I'm going to take this a step further, and I'm going to blend this down a little bit in my food processor, a little bit more, to get kind of a more creamy texture. We'll come back to that later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate out my basil leaves from the stems. We don't really want the stems in this case. You can use the stems. There are people out there who would say you should use the stems. If you want to use the stems, go for it. They are a tad bit woody. So in a thing like a pesto in particular, they will create some problems. They're just picking them off here and measuring them because I want to know how much I have. So I want to make sure I use the proper weight of basil in this recipe. All right, so that is 1.5 ounces of basil. I'm going to put those into my food processor. I cleaned the bowl of my food processor from making the duck salad, and I'm going to use it now to make my pesto. If you were here for my last video about sauces, you'll know that I really like a food processor for making pesto because it's a little more even on the cook. So next thing to add will be the peas themselves. So I got my shocked peas. I'm going to dump them out and strain them. Make sure I have no little bits of ice in there. Don't want any little bits of ice. And then I'm going to add the peas. Now I have 3 ounces of peas that I'm going to add. Now peas will add a unique kind of natural sweetness, but also a distinct kind of earthy flavor to all of this. Finally, last thing I need to add into my pesto is the mint leaves. Now, last time I did this, I did 2 ounces of basil and I did about 3/4 of an ounce of mint. This time, I'm going to do a little bit under 2 ounces of basil and a lot less mint. I only want the mint to kind of be an afterthought. I also don't want to crowd this too much. Too many flavors is going to be too much. So I got just under 0.2 ounces of mint to add to this. Like always, when we do one of these, we are going to add a garlic clove to that. So you're going to take your garlic clove, you are going to smash it, skin it, and dice it. By the way, smashing the garlic, A, makes it taste better, B, so much fun. You'll see I didn't worry too much about it being very pretty. It's going to go into a food processor anyways. Just chopping it up helps it be a little more evenly distributed throughout your sauce. I'm going to add in about 1/4 cup, so about 1/2 ounce of pistachios into my mix. I'm going to finish off by just grating off my Parmesan cheese. There's all of my pesto, or all of my Parmesan. Stick that right into here with my herbs and my nuts. I'll add my lemon juice right now. Again, I'm going to juice 1 whole large lemon. Personal preference thing. I really like a nice, bright lemon flavor in my pesto. So I'm going to squeeze it out. Again, trying to keep my station as clean as I can possibly keep it. There we go. And now, process away. Now, if you've forgotten from last time, we are going to try to emulsify this a tiny bit by adding in the olive oil while it is running. So I'm gonna go ahead and push down the sides of this, make it a little bit cleaner in there. So everything's in. I don't want to lose any of this deliciousness to the bottom or sides. Stick the top back on and add my olive oil as it spins. There we have it. And because I was silly and I'm rushing, I forgot to do this. I'm gonna add salt and pepper into my mix and just give it a couple pulses to get it all blended together. And there's my pesto done. All we got left is the queso. All right, and our last but certainly not least sauce for the evening is a queso. So a queso is a cheese sauce. Specifically, it is a Mexican style or Southwestern style cheese sauce, often done kind of spicy. I'm actually not going to shoot that way too much this time. I'm going to make more kind of a traditional cheese sauce. I'm going to add a little bit of heat because I like a little bit of heat and some spices. But to make this, you are going to need equal parts butter and flour. That means they weigh the same amount, or they are the same amount when cooked down. I am using a 1/4 cup of butter and a 1/4 cup of flour. That way I can make quite a bit of queso because people love queso and it's a good thing to reheat later on. You're going to need milk. The milk is a bit subjective. It is down to what your sauce is and the thickness that you're going for, all that jazz. I am not going to measure out my milk at this point. I'm just going to start here. You will need cheese. Queso fresco for us. Again, another subjective thing. I like a lot of cheese. Maybe you don't. Maybe you want it to be super cheesy. Maybe you want it to be less cheesy. Maybe the cheese you got is way more melty than you thought it would be. Maybe you're using a less melty cheese. Really, go with your gut on this one. Grate down cheese, eat what you want with it. Finally, you're gonna need some spices. Very specifically, cumin, chili powder, salt, pepper. You could use garlic powder. I actually don't have any garlic powder right now, so I'm gonna use 1 clove of garlic, crushed and minced. I'm gonna actually cook that in with the butter when I'm making something called a roux, which I'll explain in a little bit. At this point, go crazy, go hog. What do you want in this? Don't use chili powder, use a jalapeno. If you want a jalapeno so you can get that fresh kind of chili flavor, but you don't want it to be super spicy, cut out the seeds and cut out the membrane on the inside, dice it up real fine. Probably won't notice it too much. Add more heat, add, I don't know, it's really up to you. Cheese sauce and queso are one of those extremely forgiving things. They taste like cheese most of the time, so, you know. I would say cumin, something spicy like a chili powder or a cayenne, garlic, salt and pepper are definites that you need to have for this. All right, it's queso time. Now, to make a queso, what you need to start with is something called a roux. Now, a roux is the base for a lot of cream sauces, particularly in like Creole food. The basic concept is equal parts butter, equal parts flour. Now I'm going to cook down this butter. I'm going to use a whisk. Whisks are kind of important in this step. I'm just going to kind of spread it out. Now, I didn't have garlic powder, so I'm going to add some garlic now. Now, the thing about adding garlic to things, garlic cooks extremely fast and it burns even faster. So what you really want to do is you want to get your garlic in for like 13 seconds to 30 seconds. Just kind of spread it around, get it aromatic, it means smelling good, then add your next ingredient. My next ingredient in this case is going to be a 1/4 cup of flour. Now this is a big important step of making a roux. This is where most people get this wrong. You are not done here. You are going to sit and nurse this. You are going to cook it for a while, stirring all the time, getting that flour cooked off, because there's nothing worse than taking a bite of something and getting a big old taste of uncooked flour. So I'm going to cook this down for a little bit. When I think it's ready to go, I'm going to add in my spices. Now I'm an eyeballer, but I've been doing this for a long time, and so I can do pretty well with it. I'm going to go for a more mild one, so I'm going to add about a teaspoon of chili powder and about 2 teaspoons of cumin. The thing about cumin, you use it in a lot of dishes. It's kind of a all-around spice, but it's also a spice that adds a lot of flavor without adding a lot of heat. You'll see it in almost every kind of dish like this. Notice my sauce is getting this kind of brown color. I don't mind, I'm good with that. I'll let that cook for a little bit as I add in some pepper. So another thing you want to do is you want to cook out that raw taste of spices. The raw taste of spices is another unpleasant flavor. And salt. I can smell that chili powder and that cumin cooking together with that garlic. All right, now the milk. Probably about a half cup, but I'm gonna eyeball it. An eyeballer. I'm just gonna let that cook. Now I wanna bring it to a gentle boil because I want it to start to thicken up. So what it's gonna do is it's gonna play with the roux I made. It's going to start making a slightly thickened sauce. And this is where really the eyeballing comes in, because you can already see that is thicker than I want it to be. So I'm going to add in more milk into this to thin it down. By the way, this is also how you make mac and cheese. This is an easy way to make mac and cheese, and this is legitimately cheaper than buying the boxes. Get a big old thing of pasta of some kind, usually about $1 something at the store. You can find it even cheaper if you go to the right store. Cook that down and then make your roux, make your cream sauce, add your cheese. All right. Oh, that's looking good. Let's add in the cheese. So I went ahead and did the entire thing in queso fresco. You can see it is a soft cheese, very soft. I didn't grate it, I just kind of crushed it in my fingers. And that's going to melt down real nice. It's a really good melting cheese. Stir it up as it slowly melts. It does have a lot of liquid in it. One thing that it can do is it can cause separation in your sauce if you're not careful. If you do it well, you'll get this kind of nice, good, delicious sauce. Now here again is where you taste. You want to get a taste of what you made. See if it's what you want it to be. Yep, that's what I want it to be. Now, I'll tell you a secret. If you're cooking for your kids, parents, and they don't like a spicy queso, add hot sauce afterwards. That's it, everybody. Let's go to closing. Well, there you have it. That is the mystery meal for this week. I don't know if I'll do this every week. It's kind of a fun one-off thing to do. But I do have to say, in general, I thought it all went pretty well. The queso fresco did not melt as well as I thought it was going to, so it was a little bit grainy, but the taste was good. Probably would have added a little bit more salt into that one. I did add some habanero hot sauce I made to it, and it was choice. The pesto was excellent. I knew that would be excellent because I made 1,000 of those. That pesto was great. You should definitely try that one. The duxelle, also delicious. The only thing I would have done was added some acid to it. So some vinegar or some lemon juice because, and it occurred to me after I made everything, the big difference you're gonna get using bourbon or an alcohol like that compared to, say, a wine is that wine has an acid to it. So you'll get this kind of acidic hit. So lemon would have brightened up that duxelle a lot. However, it was delicious, and I do recommend, if you can do it, try to make a duxelle. You don't have to use morels. You can use basically any kind of mushroom. I do recommend shallots if you can find them. It doesn't have to be super expensive, but it is really good. And it makes an excellent thing to have. You can put it inside of things. So for instance, you can make a duxelle and put it inside of puff pastry, which you can get from the store. All right, that's it for this episode of Cooking with Mr. Tolley. I hope you all are enjoying. And as I said at the top, make sure you go to the link down here in the comments and vote for me. By Thursday, I will be hopefully through round 1, and then it goes on to round 2. And so I'll be in the top 20. And then it's going to go down to the top 15, but I got to keep getting those votes in. The more votes I get, the better chance I do. Eventually, I can get down to top 5, and if I can pull that off, that'd be amazing. I don't think I'm going to get it all the way through, but it's still fun to do it. I'm enjoying this process. I'm enjoying putting myself out there. Remember, as much as you can, keep trying doing things, and it's summer now. I'm going to miss all my Stevens kids, but I will see you guys again in the fall. Bye.